The world is watching the explosions, the missiles, the warnings, the deadlines, but the most important moves are happening in silence. Far from the battlefield, far from the headlines, a quiet alignment is taking shape between a sanctioned survivor and a rising superpower. This is the story of Iran and China, not as friends, not as allies in the traditional sense, but as two nations whose interests are colliding at the exact moment the global order begins to crack. Iran is running out of room. For decades, it has lived under pressure, sanctions tightening like a vice, enemies circling its borders, its economy bruised but not broken. Tehran learned long ago that compliance does not guarantee safety. Libya gave up its weapons program and fell. Iraq cooperated and was invaded. Iran drew its own conclusions. Survival requires leverage. Today, that leverage comes in three forms: missiles that can reach across the region, proxies that extend Iranian influence beyond its borders, and a nuclear program that keeps the world guessing. Iran does not want war, but it wants to make war too costly for anyone to start. Yet, Iran also understands a brutal truth: it cannot stand alone forever. Its military doctrine is resilient but aging. Its air defenses are vulnerable. Its access to advanced technology is restricted. So Iran looks east, not for ideology, not for brotherhood, but for balance. China is not interested in Iran the way the West thinks. Beijing is not chasing headlines. It is not rushing into alliances. China plays a 100-year game in a world obsessed with election cycles. For China, Iran represents three critical assets. The first is energy security. Iran sits on some of the largest oil and gas reserves on the planet. Sanctioned oil is cheap oil, and for China, the world's largest energy consumer, stability of supply matters more than Western approval. The second is geography. Iran is a bridge between East and West, a node in China's Belt and Road vision, ports, railways, and trade routes that bypass US-controlled choke points. And the third is strategic distraction. Every crisis the United States faces in the Middle East is a crisis it cannot fully focus on in the Pacific. From Beijing's perspective, Iran does not need to win, it only needs to endure. Iran's interest is immediate. It wants advanced air defense to deter airstrikes, technology to harden its missile and drone programs, diplomatic cover at the United Nations, and economic oxygen to keep its system alive. China's interest is patient. It wants a Middle East that is unstable but not exploding, a US that is overstretched but not collapsing, trade routes that remain open, and a precedent that Western sanctions are no longer fatal. This is not about China arming Iran out of loyalty. This is about China normalizing defiance. Every time Iran survives sanctions with Chinese trade, every time it resists pressure without collapsing, it sends a message to the world. The West no longer decides who lives and who falls. Here is where the tension peaks. Is China shipping tanks, jets, missile batteries? Officially, no. But modern warfare doesn't require crates-leveled weapons. It requires components, materials, software, manufacturing knowledge, dual-use technology. China doesn't need to deliver finished systems. It only needs to enable Iran to build its own. That keeps Beijing insulated, plausibly distant, yet strategically involved. For Iran, this is perfect. Domestic production means fewer choke points, less dependence, and more deniability. For China, it's even better. No fingerprints, no treaty obligations, no red lines crossed, at least not on paper. China and Iran rarely say it loud, but their actions speak clearly. The real issue is not Israel, not Saudi Arabia, not even each other's ideology. The issue is American dominance. Iran resists it directly through defiance. China resists it indirectly through replacement. Iran bleeds under pressure. China watches and learns. What sanctions work, what ones fail. How does Washington respond to escalation? How far can defiance go before force is used? Iran is not just a partner, it is a test case. This relationship is not without danger. Iran knows China will never sacrifice itself for Tehran. No Chinese soldier will die for the Islamic Republic. China knows Iran can be reckless. A regional war could spike oil prices, disrupt trade, and force Beijing into unwanted choices. So both sides walk a tightrope. Iran escalates but stops short. China supports but avoids visibility. This is coordination without commitment, alignment without alliance. The biggest mistake observers make is thinking this is temporary. It's not. This is structural. A sanctioned world is forming into own ecosystem, its own banks, its own trade routes, its own supply chains. Iran is not drifting toward China, it is being pushed. And China is not rescuing Iran, it is using the moment. Iran wants to survive this decade intact. China wants to dominate the next century. If Iran holds, if it avoids collapse, invasion, or regime change, then China learns something invaluable, that US pressure has limits, that defiance can be managed, that power is shifting not with a bang but with persistence. And if Iran falls, China loses a partner but gains a lesson. Either way, Beijing advances. This is not a dramatic alliance announcement. There will be no joint parade, no mutual defense treaty, just oil flowing east, technology flowing quietly, diplomats blocking resolutions, and pressure slowly redistributed across the globe. The storm isn't loud, it's methodical, and by the time the world realizes how deep this alignment has become, the balance may already have shifted. What makes this moment dangerous is not what China and Iran are doing loudly, it's what they are doing quietly. No press conferences, no declarations of alliance, no red flags raised high enough to trigger immediate response. Just transactions, just technology, just time. Iran is buying survival day by day, sanction by sanction, stretching the clock until pressure loses its edge. Every month it endures, the cost of confronting it rises. Every year it survives, regime change becomes a risk too great to gamble on. China is buying optionality, not war, not peace, options. The option to say no to Washington, the option to keep energy flowing even under blockade, the option to reshape global rules without firing a single shot. And here is the most unsettling truth. Neither side needs to win. They only need the old system to fail slowly, because a sudden collapse would bring chaos, but slow erosion that brings replacement. If Iran stands, it proves sanctions are survivable. If China profits, it proves dominance can be bypassed. And if the United States hesitates, caught between escalation and restraint, then the lesson echoes far beyond the Middle East. This is no longer about Iran's missiles or China's shipments or even the next strike.